All right, good evening, everyone. We will now call the committee of the whole meeting to order. Approval of agenda, additions to the agenda. The recommendation reads that the closed session item 13.1 be deferred to a special council meeting being held immediately after the committee of the whole, and that the agenda be approved as amended. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Colburn and Councillor Day. Any discussion? And I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, the culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the three fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and the Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen, the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on the land and live in peace and friendship with all the diverse peoples. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Anyone with a declaration to claim can claim it at any time. I see none. We'll move on. And next will be announcements. And Mayor Carleton.
Thank you. I actually have a bit of a brief report coming back from Good Roads and then a couple of other announcements. So at Good Roads, the first session I went to was the Emerging Leaders Forum, where students from the University of Toronto were being told what municipalities would need from them and what they could expect to receive from municipalities. They were told that in municipal jobs, they would feel like they had an impact, and the jobs in highest demand right now are in planning and financial analyst, and that there is now a hybrid model of work for most. And to be aware that job postings are often a wish list, and they may not meet every requirement, but apply anyway. It was emphasized to them that their job as staff members would be to carry out the vision of council and not their own. What I had hoped to get from this session is, what do the students as our future employees want or need from us? What are they looking for? And I think that's important for us to understand. I still found it to be quite informative, although I did feel a little discriminated against when I showed up for the session and was told that it was for students only. Apparently looked at me and made the assumption I wasn't. The second session that I found of value was again related to municipalities and companies and what they do for their employees after they're hired, what their best practices are, what they find works and what doesn't. The 3 to 4 day work week, work from home. In some cases, they were helping employees with housing. Training and skills development were a high priority. Encourage connections to groups for support within the workplace. Consider all groups, such as veterans, people of color, women. Be welcoming. What is their culture? Be clear about policies. Have an onboarding strategy where there is a 30-day, 60-day, and 90-day check-in, and do a stay interview to ask the employee why they're staying and what is still needed from us. Again, I was still hoping to hear what future employees want from us, but still a lot of information. The last session that had an impact for me was the Ontario One Call, which will be a dedicated locator model. So single source would mark all underground infrastructure within a project area. High voltage lines would be accepted to that. So dedicated locator service provider. The business requirements would include insurance, training, quality assurance, registration program. No information yet on the dollars needed for budget, but they were indicating it could be done by a municipal employee, where locates would then be done in-house instead of by a third party. And I think the main thing was all locates done by one, instead of having to call Enbridge, call Bell, call whoever. One person would do all locates. They were also looking for mention of mapping and combining all infrastructure together on one map, so that once you've done that locate, you've mapped it, now you know where it is. So that one was quite interesting. I'd also like to add that since our last council meeting, I went to the Shallow Lake Minor Hockey Banquet on the 22nd of April. They had 2 sessions to include all of the players and parents, and the energy in the room both times was just something else. So the under 11s, under 13s, under 15s, and under 21s all won their divisions in WOAA, with the under 13s taking OMHA. And when the coaches were speaking and introducing their teams, they also expressed thank you to our facility staff who keep everything in great shape for the teams. And I would ask that that get passed along to them. The thanks were for Georgian Bluff staff for providing that quality of ice surface that is well known throughout the area. And Grant and I also attended the Warden's Breakfast in Dundalk last Tuesday. And it was really interesting to see the innovative developments that are taking place in Grey County. That was quite interesting. And then this Sunday, I'm going to stop at Willie's Sports Bar, or Sports and More, which is the southeast corner of Wyerton, and I'll present them with that on behalf of council. So that's my update.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Schwolers.
I just want to take a second during announcement period to say that National Physicians Day in Canada was on May 1st. So although it was a couple days ago we missed it, my timing isn't perfect on this, but I did just want to give appreciation for all Canadian docs working hard in the medicine profession. I work at a Wyerton Emerge, as some of you may know, and I'm incredibly thankful to have such a great team of locally hardworking, passionate individuals who work tirelessly, quite honestly, to keep our communities in Georgian Bluffs healthy and cared for. I work with many GBHS physicians as a whole, but as well as many Ontario-wide locums that come to us to help with staffing supports for when physicians like our family doctors locally need some time off, they'll come in and help us out. But I work most closely with the following people, and I just wanted to give them sort of a brief shout out. Dr. Grigg, Dr. Barrett, Dr. Diodati, Dr. Lawstein, Dr. Uppen, Dr. Nelvia Van Dorp, and Dr. John Van Dorp. I'm proud to call all of you my colleagues, and I'm proud to call all of you my friends. So happy belated National Physicians Day to all Canadian doctors working in the profession of medicine. We thank you for your service to your communities locally. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor Schwolers. Any other comments? Just to add on to the Warden's Breakfast, and Sue and I were down there, and everything that they do down there is about recycling and reusable stuff. And the biggest thing I took away from that was they had recycled Adirondack chairs there. And to put it all in perspective, there's 27,000 lids off water bottles in each of those chairs. Like it was just 27, and they want you, when you're throwing your recycles away, make sure you put your lid back on and throw it out. So that was the takeaway. It was very interesting to see that part of it. So yeah, they're doing some amazing work down there. All right, moving on. Public hearings, we had none. Delegations, public question period, items on the agenda. Any person who wishes to appear before the committee of the whole regarding an item on the agenda shall make a written application to the clerk by 3 p.m. the day of the meeting to register www.georgianbluffs.ca/delegations or call the clerk's office at 519-376-2729, extension 603. 7.2 is items not on the agenda. 7.2.1, Jason O'Connor and Krista Henry, unmaintained road allowance and access to the property. Welcome, Jason and Krista. We'll allow you to come to the mic and speak. We'll give you 15 minutes to present. Thank you. It's better out.
Just shows you the map and where the road allowance is that we're.
Madam Mayor, I think we're just going to scan a copy for Councillor Thompson, but we can continue in the meantime.
So I can jump in. I've actually walked the property. I've been on the property, so don't hold up in that regard for me. I'm familiar with it and I understand.
Thanks, sir, Councillor Thompson.
So Ryan met with me out at the property. I guess he just told you, and he didn't see any issues. And I didn't know if yous would all like to come and visually walk in the road allowance, and we can show you what we're asking for. There's 2 road allowances on there. I don't know if you can see them both, but so the one is the shortest one, the most efficient one to use. It just really goes to our property. The other one going the other way runs up the edge and down to the lake. So we would like to be able to fix that up and make it easier to use as a laneway, more or less, so we could build a residence.
Thanks, Jason. Go ahead, Councillor Mayor Carlton.
So you're talking the piece that's up there beside the lake, is that where you're,
It's outlined in red there.
So the road allowance in question that we're.
right,
asking
is
for
here,
red.
but then your
But the
property is
property-
this?
Yeah, the property is that, yeah.
Yep.
That one.
Thank you.
So that unmaintained road allowance only services our property and it doesn't go to anybody else's.
Any further questions?
Sorry, just to confirm, the property you're referring to is Appendix 1 is in the red border, is that correct?
The
Yeah.
red border is the road allowance that we're asking for permission for
I see.
admitted service agreement, but
So the
the
property,
property is the one that.
it's on the lake. And
That's
you-
right there in the lake.
Oh, I see. Okay, I
Sorry,
got
should
you.
have marked
Yep,
that.
that's okay.
This
Yep.
is- This is the property.
Any further questions for anyone? Yep, Councillor Winters.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Jason and Krista, I actually drove that yesterday. I was out there. There is a red gate. That is the gate to your
Yeah,
property,
that's
correct? So
right.
that was the property line that I was at yesterday?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it is a drivable portion of road. It does need some improvements.
Well, that would be, we would
Yeah.
definitely like to improve it so you're not, you see the mess you put on the road when you go out and then you're tracking mud.
I went slow.
Yeah. And it's funny because one neighbor actually pulled in her laneway tonight that is a neighbor of that property come to our home, and I asked her and she said she had no issues with what we were doing. So I don't know what more to say to you, but I think to see it best is what is actually physically come out there, and I can explain it better than being on camera and TV and the road allowance has been driven on for years with tractors and pickups. I don't think I sure wouldn't want to make it a full road just to go in there. I think that probably would upset some of the neighbors if we started like making it 66 feet wide, and it's kind of unnecessary, I think.
And sorry, just for my own curiosity, what type of residence are you planning on building? And has your property been severed off in the past?
That's been there. People purchased it off Krista's grandmother. I think
And I think it was like a great uncle before that. So it's
Did she sever it off in the past? No.
not that.
CAO Fletcher.
Yeah, and council, I'm, this is your opportunity to chat. I think, when staff is looking at this, perhaps you might consider referring it back to staff to work with, the residents. Because I think we've had some advice around whether it's a limited service agreement or something else. I think we recall a recent discussion we had on another matter. So I think there's certainly merit to reviewing what is being requested. But what you might want to do is consider referring the matter back to staff.
we tried to do.
As you say that, I did email the planner and got nowhere. And then just got flip-flopped back and forth between her and someone else. And then in the end, nobody ever answered me.
CAO Fletcher.
So I'll respond with an apology, first of all. And secondly, we have our new planner starting on Monday. So I will take this back if that's council's wish to work with our new planner and Mr. Lobley, who looks at our real property and unopened road allowances and that sort of thing. And we would take that direction, council.
Councillor Thompson.
Sorry. So I did, as I mentioned and Jason mentioned before, I did go out to the property, and what I would share to my colleagues is not. So this is my opinion. I think Councillor Winters had a look at it, and my thoughts about this are, when it comes to the road allowance, we sometimes get nervous when we talk about. I've lost the words, limited service agreement, because, in the past, those haven't worked for us, or people that have come back and wanted different rules, or, as time goes on, people think different things. When I looked at this property, I'm curious about a couple things, and this is not from a planning standpoint, and I may not have all the facts, but from a common sense standpoint, and that's all I'm talking about, was it. I wondered about the limited. I think what Jason and Krista want to do is build a home on the property, and this road allowance is the laneway into the property. So that makes sense, and I think that the ratepayers are coming to us with a place of, our priority here is to build a house. This is our access to the house. Call it a limited service agreement. Call it our laneway. Sell it to us. Whatever the options are that are on the table might be interesting. And their little one may have an opinion too, obviously, that I don't even know about. So my question though is about, is a limited service agreement the right answer, or is it easier and cleaner for everybody for us to stop this up and sell it to them as a laneway? And then we're not worried about, what's the standard? Are we maintaining it? Is there a turnaround? Who else can use it? So I may be missing a whole lot of pieces, but in my conversation, I wondered about, is this a better idea for us just to sell this to them? And when I think of this road allowance, I don't believe that this road allowance will have any purpose to us whatsoever, because as I understand it, it goes into their property and then it veers into a lake. I don't think we're giving up a future opportunity here. So again, I may be totally wrong. Having been on the site and talking to the ratepayers, that is what made sense to me, and I thought it was worthy of exploring. And I will support the ratepayers in saying, yeah, that sounds cool too. We can't seem to get an answer. We're sending emails or we're sending requests. We can't really get an answer. So I'm encouraged that they're here. I'm encouraged that we're listening, and I'm encouraged that we're going to move it forward. My own little piece there would just be to say, is a limited service agreement the best, or should we be looking at a different option? I probably could have said that quicker, but that's the best I could do.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Coburn.
Thank you. So through you, Chair Pringle, to the CAO, I support sending it back to staff. We did have a discussion about limited service agreements in the past. I may need a refresher on where we decided to go with that. My concern is always that we're applying the rules consistently and not setting precedents. This one seems to make sense to me, but I don't have all of the information either. I apologize as well for staff not getting back to you, but we were likely in transition a little bit with planning. Now that we have a new planner coming on, no, she says, no, we weren't. I believe you.
I started back in October.
Gotcha. Okay. Fair enough. And so with the new planner coming on, I think we need those planning eyes on this issue. And if staff, I would just recommend, Chair Pringle, that we hand it back to staff to give us some options and come up with the best possible resolution.
Thank you. Councillor Shoulders.
I totally support what Councillor Coburn is saying. Can I just go back to the CEO and say, for my own refresher, my memory is like a goldfish sometimes. Can you repeat what you had to say 2 minutes ago about having it go back to staff and what you guys would propose doing with it? I'm just new and hoping that you could provide more clarity on that.
And through you, Chair Pringle, great question. I think all of the questions that you're asking and Councillor Thompson is asking is exactly what we need to go back and review in the context of this particular request and bring information back to council. And we may be presenting you with options to consider.
Mayor Carlton.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a question about that road allowance. Does it fall into the land claim at all, or is this a totally separate situation on this one? And is that something we should look at and be sure of? Because I would agree with selling it and not being into a limited service agreement, but I think we need to consider that land claim before we move ahead with it. So just thanks.
So through you, Madam Mayor, I don't believe so, but that would be one of the pieces of information we would need to bring back to council.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I'm cognizant of the month, so we're looking at May now, and I'm assuming that you know, sometimes if we're putting an application in October, we're starting the process in October, we're now into starting the building months. Is there a way for us to move this forward with some sort of extreme expedience? Not extreme like let's not pay attention to deadlines, but is there a way for us to move this as quick as we can, given that I expect that the ratepayers may have been looking to build this spring, and that's why they looked at a fall beginning to the process?
We would like to sell our residence now because stuff looks like we're going to have a good spring in real estate. So I guess we're pushing for an answer, and what we're doing is it feels like we've spent enough time with no answer. I would have no issue buying the road allowance as long as it was feasible to purchase it. But I think that by the time that starts, could you give us a limited service agreement? And then in the future, if you decide you want to sell it to us, we would buy it. Just maybe that would make it move quicker for us to start working on a building permit and some house plans and.
Councillor Day.
First of all, I want to acknowledge your persistence and patience and polite way of bringing forward something that clearly has, I'm sure there's been some frustration around how slow it's been for you. And just to echo that, I agree that sending this back to the staff is what I would like to see happen for further recommendations. And just that it seems very logical what you're presenting right now. And I'm also have a growing awareness of precedents and our many conversations around road allowances in Georgian Bluffs. So it is part of a bigger picture, which makes it a little bit harder to process really quickly sometimes. But I really do sincerely hope we can find an answer for you this season so that you're able to move forward.
And I strongly push everybody to go out and actually view the property too, because I think that every road allowance and everything is a little bit different. So I think you should visually see what we're proposing there, because the paper tells a little bit, but not.
Sure, that's great. Councillor Winters.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to echo everybody else's comments. I mean, I think this makes sense. I support it. I agree with it going back to staff, but I'm hoping that we as a council can give some sort of time frame here, because I understand the frustrations that they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is that we're going to see this back the 1st of June? Is it the middle of June? I think we need some sort of context here to keep this moving, right? I don't want to see it come off the rails. It does make sense when you go out and you do see it. It's 500 feet of laneway. There's a gate there that is at his property. It doesn't go anywhere else. But I do think limited service is probably the way to go. You're going to find the land claim may cloud it at the moment, but there's always the opportunity to start with one and go to another if that's the case. But I just want to make my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Winters. Councillor Thompson.
That's good feedback, Councillor Winters, and you certainly know that information so much better than I do, so I appreciate that comment. I just wanted to give some context to my colleagues. So when Kristen Jason first reached out to me was in the middle of January, and I attended the site on January 30th. So, you know, I have been encouraging them to keep contacting staff and keep up with staff to move the agenda forward. So I'm sure that they do have some correspondence, but it was January 30th that I've attended. So I can speak to that frustration if you fast forward and think January 30th, February 28th, April, March I missed in there. So it has been a protracted process, and I think we should do everything we can to speed that up.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson and Councillor Scholz.
I don't want to say that I'm exclusively saying no to this. I just think that I support development within Georgian Bluffs, of course, and I support the ratepayers and you guys. I just think that it's important to echo what you guys are saying, in that it would be good to get more feedback and more direction from staff. I think it's important to send it back and hear something from the planner about this, but I definitely appreciate that you guys want to get a start on this for sure.
Excellent. Any other comments? Oh, CEO Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair Pringle, and I think we've heard loud and clear that this needs to move along expeditiously, and I will chat with these residents right after this meeting.
Do we need anything to move it forward? Do we need a recommendation from Carly for us to move this forward?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I'm sure our clerk has got us crafted one.
Through your chair, Pringle. Feel free to jump in if you'd like to make any revisions. That staff be directed to bring back a report regarding access to concession 17 part lot 21 to a meeting in June.
Thank you for that. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Scholz, Councillor Winters. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. All right. Moving on here with some correspondence. The Owen Sound Yard Waste site. So obviously there's been lots of talk around it here lately. We had 8.1.1 Janice and Wayne McDonald. Anyone like to comment? Make a comment on what they've read in that agenda? No comments there from anyone? All right. And then the second one was 8.1.2, letter from Lynn Coleman, owner operator of West Bayshore Gardening. And anyone like to question, comment on that information? Not seeing any. I guess we'll receive that all for information. Thank you. Staff reports. Community Services 9.1.1 Food Cycler Pilot Program. And the recommendation reads that Council directs staff to work with Food Cycle Science to implement a pilot program for food waste recycling for up to 100 residents in the township of Georgian Bluffs. That up to $10,000 from the approved climate change funding is allocated to support this program, and the council directs staff to report back to council by the end of 2023 on the status of the pilot program. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Day, Councillor Thompson, and any discussion? No discussion. Oh, Councillor Day. Oh, yeah.
I do.
Okay, no, go ahead.
Or one question, I guess. I was wondering if the 100 people or households need to be residents. We have Keppel Sarawak within Georgian Bluffs, and if there was a teacher willing to take this on with their classroom and take the device home for the summer, it might be a great way to build community and some education into this as well.
So thank you for the question, and through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, to Councillor Day. Not that I want to give away secrets about what might be coming up on an agenda, but Councillor Day, that question is extremely timely. I was actually at the school earlier this week, and I think there's something exciting that the pupils would like to request of council in a future meeting. So I won't steal their thunder, though.
Thank you for that, Niall. There, yeah, I didn't want to take the thunder away from me to explaining it all. It was so well laid out in the report there that it was all the questions were answered, I thought. So anyway, it's good. No further questions? Oh, Councillor Day.
I was wondering if any of the other municipalities that have taken part have any feedback on how well it's going or has gone.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, the feedback I've had so far from other municipalities that have participated has really focused on the uptake that they've seen. So locally, municipalities around us that have put these out have underestimated. So we're going in slightly more aggressively than some of our other colleagues have done in terms of numbers. They've been going at the 50, 75 mark and found that they've had uptake usually within a day or two for their entire run. So we're going a little more aggressive than some of the others, and we've heard that feedback around the uptake of the program. Speaking to the folks over at Food Cycle Science that are running this and starting to collect the data, they do have some interesting information that actually comes out of BC, where they've been running this for slightly longer. And there are municipalities out there that have done away with curbside organic recycling and bought one of these for every single property in their townships and their municipalities, because the uptake and the reduction in food organic waste as a result of putting these in has been that financially rewarding to the municipality that it is cheaper to buy these for every single house than it is to supply curbside recycling to them. So there is some very positive information that's coming out from BC, but they are still in the very early stages of their Ontario rollout of the pilot. So it's a bit early to say what it looks like in Ontario.
Excellent. Mayor Carlton.
Just to clarify on that, when you say curbside recycling, it's the green bins. So you wouldn't be picking up green bins, it's the others. So it recycles all that food waste. And the only issue would be if you were putting them in apartment buildings and people don't have a garden to go put it in afterwards, it might be wise to consider a drop-off spot for them to take that too, because from the information I've got at conferences, a regular family could fill a 4 to 5 gallon pail in about 3 months. So if they don't have a place to put it, where are they going to dump it? But I'm sure we could look after that.
Councillor Coburn. Oops.
It wasn't really a question, but I might have a response. And so through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. So I've been using one of these now for several weeks, family of 3. I'm running about 3 cycles a week, whereas before I was collecting about 2 pails. And so my pails, I'd collect 2 or 3 of those a week, usually, that would then need to go into compost. I'm running it 2 or 3 times a week for about the same amount of volume goes in there as collected in one of my pails. I so far have kept all the product that's come from it, and I haven't filled up one of those pails. So my volume has decreased. So even if I wasn't going to use this in the garden, I was simply going to put it in, and we would not encourage this. This is not the intention. But even if all you simply did was take the material that came out of this and put it into your garbage, your weight taken away in garbage is reduced by as much as 95% week over week, and your volume is decreased by at least 75%. So even if people just used this and poured it straight into their ordinary garbage stream, it's better for the environment because it's now no longer having the trucking costs that are associated with that weight and that volume. It's also better in terms of its environmental impact once it gets into landfill, because it's already started on its composting journey. So some of that greenhouse gas loss it becomes a processing problem at the landfill sites is eased. We wouldn't want people doing that ideally, but if that is what people find themselves in a situation, it is still very beneficial to run through these systems. I should stress, this is not the only system on the market that does this. It's just the only one that's running this pilot.
Thanks for that, Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Chair Pringle, and through you to Niall. I love this idea. I think it's great. Thank you for sourcing that out for us. My question is about distribution of the units. How will that be done? Is it first come, first serve, or do we want to make a more targeted approach? I have spoken with some folks from Cobble Beach who are not allowed to have composters, and so I would hope that at least one resident there might be able to pilot. And I'm just wondering how we make sure we get a good cross section.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, to you, Councillor Coburn. So great question. Working with the basis of how others have done this, the theory would be first come, first serve. This is not an exclusive pilot. So I can come back to you. If we sell these all out in 2 weeks, I could come back to you 3 weeks later and Food Cycle would run another 100 for us. So there's no limit on supply. There's no time limit on the pilot. So if we do find that there is appetite for this, I will come back and I will ask for approval for some more money, and we can extend the pilot into a second phase, a third phase, a fourth phase, and so on and so forth. So we don't have a limit on the number of units overall. It's just 100 to start with. I have been in touch with Cobble, and Cobble was one of the reasons why we went from a 75 unit cap up to the 100 because Cobble, there were quite a few residents on the working with the Cobble marketing team there. They put the word out, and that they had a number of residents reach out and said they would be interested, and certainly they do have restrictions on how they can compost at Cobble, and so that was informative in helping influence the numbers that we're going to get. And as I say, if we do find uptake is very, very significant, we'll go back for a second round of the pilot. I'll be back in front of you to report on that in due course. In terms of the distribution for this, we're going to make it as simple as possible. People will log online. They'll go through the company direct to make a purchase and a reservation. The units will be shipped out, and we'll have a collection day at Shallow Lake Arena, probably in mid-July.
Thanks for that, Councillor Day.
Sorry, it's exciting. I have one more question. Are there different sizes for commercial venues, restaurants and school cafeterias?
So at this point, no. There's just two sizes that we're offering, and realistically speaking, the larger of the two, which is it's referred to as the Maestro. If you're going on the website, I think they've now rebranded it as the EC50 or the Eco 50. But the two sizes we will be offering, the larger size, realistically, a family of 4 or 5 would fill that routinely quite quickly, I suspect. So it's not going to do for a commercial application.
Councillor Scholies.
Sorry, just one other question. Just to confirm, what was the cost of each individual unit for anybody?
So the units are heavily discounted through you. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Pringle. The units are heavily discounted through a stacked funding arrangement. If you were to buy them on the market, I think the more expensive, the larger one is $800, and the slightly smaller one is around $500. I think that through the stacked funding, we are able to offer those to residents at $150 for the smaller one and $300 for the larger.
All right, thanks for that information. Some great questions there. We have the mover and seconder already. We just need to call the vote. So the motion on the floor there, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Start over. Yeah, start over. Sorry about that. 9.1.2 CSD 2023-08, use of the Owen Sound Yard Waste Facility. Recommendation reads that staff be directed to work with Owen Sound colleagues to allow for residents of Georgian Bluffs to access the yard waste facility in Owen Sound with proof of address, and that council approved $26,000 to be funded from the working capital reserve as the cost for this service for the balance of 2023, and that staff be directed to work with Owen Sound colleagues to develop a proportional cost for future access for Georgia Bluff residents, and that the cost of future access for Georgia Bluff residents be included in future annual budgets. I need a mover and a seconder. Mayor Carlton and Councillor Coburn. I will turn this over to Niles. We'll have a report on this.
So I'm quite happy to defer and have the polite comment that my report is sufficient and you have no questions, and we can roll on. So obviously, thank you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. So obviously, this has been a fairly hot button topic for residents over the last few weeks. Staff at Owen Sound reached out to us in early April to share the outcome from their budget conversations. Obviously, the costs associated with the running of the Owen Sound facility have increased quite significantly over recent years. And as part of their budget deliberations this year, looked at how to manage that and had identified that things like commercial use of that site were driving up costs. So some of the things they were having to deal with were very large stumps coming in from trees. Owen Sound doesn't have the equipment to process that, so they're having to contract that out. It was an additional cost of running the site that they weren't set up for. They'd also found that there was unfortunately a number of residents or a number of people using the site were putting the wrong things into the site, which again drives up the costs of processing it. And so as a result of all of that, Owen Sound made the decision that they needed to have staff on site to enforce the rules, obviously to try and target those cost elements. one of the rules of that site has always been that it is only for Owen Sound residents. And so they've been turning away residents from Georgian Bluffs. I anticipate they've been turning away residents from Meaford, possibly from the north end of Chatsford, and various other places for whom this had become a convenient site for dropping off yard leaf waste and so on. So obviously we've heard, and I suspect you have all heard from residents that have been using this site for a number of years about their frustration around using that. So we very rapidly have been working with staff at Owen Sound in a very collaborative way, I should stress, to try and find a solution for this. We did look at a number of other options as well in the case that we couldn't come up to an agreement with Owen Sound, but this one does seem to make the most sense at this point in time. And so the cost and the recommendations in front of you have come from those conversations based on a proportional fee for access for the rest of this year. We would continue to work with Owen Sound on ways in which this might go in the future. This is a quickly come up with solution, might not be the permanent solution in terms of how we work it going forward. We'll work that out with Owen Sound staff over the balance of the year if we're able to, based on this evening's discussions, Monday's discussions at Owen City, and then obviously the council recommendation.
Thanks for that, Niall. Any comments from council? Mayor Carlton.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would just like to say thanks to Owen Sound staff and council for considering this and for working with us. I think it's a great asset for our community to be able to make use of. So thanks to them for being willing to work with us.
Oh, very good point there. Council Winters.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. Again, through you to Niall. Great report. Appreciate everything. I think this makes perfect sense. My question is, if we approve this tonight, how soon can the residents of Georgian Bluffs start using the facility?
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, we believe very quickly. And so we do need to wait for council due process to happen. And so that is tonight. It's Monday now at council at Owen Sound. And assuming it all goes well there, we will be endorsing the recommendations that are in front of you, providing you pass them this evening at council on May 10th. As I understand it, we should be able to allow access and get access within 1 to 2 weeks of that, maybe even quicker.
Larry, thanks for that. Any other questions? All good. We do have a motion on the floor here. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Need somebody to run that for me. Yeah. All right, we're moving on to human resources 9.2.1 HR 2023-04 CIO performance review 360-degree assessment. Recommendation reads, whereas Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs adopt an annual CIO performance policy in March of 2020, and whereas since the adoption of said policy, staff have identified areas for revision that may increase its efficiency. Now, therefore, it be resolved that Council hereby directs staff to amend the CAO annual performance review policy as follows. That the 360-degree assessment provision be amended so that it is held in the spring of every other year or sooner at the request of Council, and that Council directs staff to proceed immediately with preparing the RFP for external consultant to conduct a 360-degree assessment on the CAO. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Coburn, Councillor Winters, and I will turn this over to who would like to speak to this on staff. Anyone? Oh, Crystal, yes, I guess Crystal will be the one. Go ahead, Crystal.
Thank you very much. Council in beginning of February asked for me to come back with some options for assessments for the CAO, and I looked at more specifically the 360 degree, as that was the main focus on that. I am not an expert in conducting a performance review on the CAO. The best solution to this is a consultant for you. They have the expertise. They know how to do it. There is more involved in it. They would meet with you. As a group, they would outline the next process. They have questions already completed for this. They would then compile the list of people that would respond to this. And then the confidentiality part we discussed that was very important. And by having an external consultant complete this, they have tools already for this. So whether it's log into a website with a code for that person to complete the assessment. So then everything is gathered into a database, and instead of having it listed by this person said this, person one, etc., it's all into one. So then that eliminates any person feeling that their answers may not feel that they're going to be confidential enough. So they will then present you with a report outlining the results, and then you would go from there. You do have to decide what you want to do with the report after that. Many municipalities, it's the CAOs because it's based for their performance and how they would improve on that. And then you guys would meet with the CAO and to discuss that. So that is what I suggest as.
Thanks for that, Crystal. Any further comments from council? Councillor Colburn.
Thank you, Chair Pringle, and through you to our HR professional. I do have a couple of questions. This is under the policy statement, not the initial report, but under human resources. It says the results of the surveys and the 360-degree feedback are provided directly to the mayor. And maybe this is a question also for our mayor, but I wonder if it should be the mayor and deputy mayor, or perhaps even a small executive committee of council. But I think it's always best to have more than one representative from council to be receiving that type of information. So that's my one point. Do you see where that is, Crystal? That's on page 3 of the policy, review policy under human resources. So that's my first comment. Under the 360-degree assessment paragraph, it says that the external consultant will be sourced to summarize the feedback, and a summary of the feedback would be provided to the CAO and mayor, but an executive summary would be provided to council. I would recommend that the mayor is not entitled to any more information than the rest of council, so I don't want an executive summary. As a council member, I would want to see the exact same information, the feedback and the summary that the mayor is receiving. Those are the only 2 questions and comments that I have on this. Other than, this is why I was asking earlier about reviewing policies down the road. I think if we're going to engage a consultant again down the road to help us through this process, I would also like that consultant to review this document and provide feedback as well. If they're the experts, I would hope we would use that opportunity to get their feedback on our policy. But we can put this one in place for now, and then when we engage a consultant down the road, we can ask for their feedback on this document.
Thanks, Councillor Colburn. Go ahead, Crystal.
Yeah, through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Coblin. With your first question, that can be provided to everyone and not just the mayor. If you so want that, it is your policy if you want that changed. To your second question, I would have to leave that up to the external consultant on what they would prepare for you and how, whether they provide you with a whole document or if it's just a summary. But that would be a question that you would have best answered from the consultant, not myself.
Councillor Colburn.
So that's in regards to the summary versus the executive summary, Crystal. Yeah. So again, I operate under the premise that we're all entitled to the same information. And I've seen executive summaries, and perhaps I'm mincing words, I hope not. Executive summaries can be parsed down to the such a watered down version that it becomes meaningless. So I would advocate for us to put that the same information be received by all of council.
Thanks for that. Mayor Carlton.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Coburn, for catching that. I would agree. I don't think the mayor or mayor and deputy mayor should be receiving any different information than what all the rest of council does. I think it should come to all of us equally, because asking me to pare that down and decide what the rest of council should hear about it, I think is not proper. I think it should come to all of council. So I thank you for catching that.
again, just as a follow-up, that would be something that the consultant would give you advice on.
Councillor Colburn.
But I think, with all due respect, I think if we're going to approve that document tonight and we would like that to be changed now, I'm hoping that would be one revision that could be made. I also have another question, if I may, Chair Pringle. So the timing changes make sense for our current situation and the hiring date of our current CAO and so forth. But doesn't the timing depend on when a future CAO might be hired? Like, if this is saying June and they're hired in May, well, I guess it's in the second year though, right? Okay. Never mind.
All right, any other questions? I'm thinking, are we looking to make an amendment then to the motion on the floor?
Through you, Chair Pringle, we certainly can make an amendment to the motion that's on the floor. I guess it would simply add a line to specify that the policy be amended to provide that the summary or that the document is provided to all of council rather than just the mayor and deputy mayor. So you would just need a mover and a seconder for that amendment and to take the vote on the amendment and then back to the.
Perfect, thank you for that. I need a mover and a seconder for the amended. Councillor Colburn, Councillor Day. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. And going back to the original motion on the floor there, to move it forward also, I need to just call the vote, I guess. We've already got a mover and a seconder, so just call the vote. All those in favor of the first motion? That is carried. Thank you. All right, unfinished business, we are nil. New business, we are nil. A notice of motion. Does any member wish to make a notice of motion at this time? Councillor Day.
Hello. It's my first notice of motion. I very much appreciate that we have land acknowledgements, and I realize that that is a relatively recent addition to Georgian Bluffs meetings. And I've been thinking about a suggestion to help ensure we avoid a common pitfall of land acknowledgements where they become very rote when we hear the same words at the start of meetings. So I'll bring that forward in a future meeting.
Thank you for that. Any other notices of motion? Councillor Scholz.
In February, I met with Jeff Robbins, who owns the lots in front of Legacy Ridge. He has plans written up to develop a property on Legacy Ridge. And at some point, I'm going to address that with council. And I think moving forward, going into the summer, I think that might be a good time to do so. So at some point, I'll be bringing that forward for council and for staff to address.
Thank you for that. Anything else? Nothing else. All right, we'll move on. Closed session we have deferred to the next meeting that we are having. So basically, we are at council will meet for a special council meeting at 6:30 or 5:55 tonight during the adjournment of this meeting. If there's no other business, not seeing any, we will now call for an adjournment of this meeting. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Colburn, Councillor Scholz, and I'll call the vote. All those in favor? All right, we are now adjourned.